Welcome to the Global 50 CEO talk today. We're very happy to see you here. I just had a very quick chat with Rüdiger, and it seems to be the first time that we have a non-publishing company here, a representative from a streaming company, Kelly Luegenbiehl. Very pleased to be. Yeah. So welcome. This has proven to be a very successful format here at the Frankfurt Book Fair. We're very happy that it takes part here every Wednesday, every year on Wednesday, 2 p.m. So I leave the stage now to Rüdiger and Kelly.
Thank you, Catherine. Hello. Hello. Good afternoon. Welcome, Kelly Luegenbiehl of Netflix. If the publishing community in Frankfurt is a family, then I guess we are now welcoming a new member of this family.
Thank you.
Because it's the first time that it was said that we don't talk about storytelling with a publisher. Remember a few years ago, Markus Dohle said, it's all about storytelling anyway. But we are talking with, what are you? A movie company, a TV company, an internet company? What kind of company is Netflix?
I would say we are a streaming service that endeavors to bring great stories to audiences all around the world and remove any barriers for access that we can.
Streaming books, yeah? Books in pipes. So it makes a difference, you see. And at the same time, and I'm jumping right into the hot topics of our conversation, I promise we have a number of hot topics. You bring an announcement of 3 more books going into streaming world.
Yes, we are very excited today to announce them. The first one is our new collaboration with Fredrik Backman, his new book, Anxious People, which we'll be producing in Sweden in Swedish language with FLX, a partner that we've loved working with in the past. We also are bringing to life 40 Rules of Love, which is a much-loved book and one that we're planning to do in Turkey, which is really exciting for us in Turkish language, as well as Daniel Kellman's book, Till, which we're partnering with Barambo Odar and Jante Frise, our showrunners from Dark, who brought us that idea.
Just to give you a little context, Elif Shafak was a very, very prominent guest at the book fair just a few years ago because of the political involvement she had and the argument she had with the politics of her country. And at the same time, we see she's really an author who can, according to Netflix, aspire to reaching big audiences through just another totally different medium. Daniel Kehlmann, Till, was also headline news here at the Frankfurt Book Fair a few years ago. And again, you have been aware. We will talk about it in a little while, how exactly that works, because the relationships, the networks, are different from those that we know here. And let me remind you, for this format, as in the previous years, we have a formula, the global ranking of the publishing industry, which is listing the 56 largest publishing companies worldwide. That ranking is an initiative by a French publishing trade magazine, Livre Hebdo, and it is co-published by 4 other publishing trade magazines, Buch in Germany, Publishers Weekly in the US, Book Tower in China, and Publish News in Brazil and in Spain. And the editors of these 5 publications will be the ones asking the questions to Kelly, and I will intervene perhaps a little bit if I want to clarify one or the other element. But I invite now Fabrice Piot, as the editor of Livre Hebdo, to start. We should have a microphone for Fabrice. There was a nice lady. Yes, wonderful. And Fabrice Piot is the first who has a few questions for Kelly Luegenbiehl.
So, Kelly, Netflix founds its public actually quite rapidly in all country where you try to settle, by raising new approaches, new formats in connections of what the public was waiting for, probably. I mean, it explains this fast growing. How would you define this, the new audience you got, and their needs, their specific needs?
I think one of the really exciting things about particularly the area that I'm working in, which is the non-English language content, is how quickly audiences have taken to stories from outside of their own countries and outside of their own language. I think that it was something that we had an instinct that people would love to see stories in their own language and from their country. But I think what we've been really pleasantly surprised with was how quickly those stories have found audiences globally. And I think, for us, one of the things that we're always looking for with bringing these local stories to a global audience is really that specificity and making sure that it first and foremost speaks to the local audience and then to the global audience.
But do you think you reach specific audience? I mean, new audience, new generations, I don't know, and how you can describe this new generation?
Well, we're making stories for everyone, so I wouldn't necessarily say that we're speaking only to a new audience or to an audience that already existed. We're really looking to do stories for everyone. So our goal is that you can come into Netflix any day of the week, any time of day, and there will be a story that you want to watch.
When you are buying story, what does it take to raise your curiosity?
As everybody in this room knows, I'm sure, there are great universals to storytelling that supersede any form or any genre, which is great stories and great characters. So for us, I think, particularly as we're looking at doing things that are more serialized, you have to want to welcome those characters back into your home episode after episode, and that's something that we really look for. And I think also something that can make a story really unique and distinctive is the specificity of those characters.
There are also something about the way you tell these stories, no?
Yes, there definitely is, in the on-demand streaming world, a way in which we see audiences have freedom in how they watch different types of stories. I would actually say that there are a lot of similarities in the way that people consume a Netflix series and a great book. So that story that you can't put down, you just want to get to the end, you want to finish the chapter, maybe start the next chapter. There's a lot of similarities in sort of the way and the feeling that you get from watching a great Netflix series with a great book.
Looking for new ideas, new stories, are you focusing on certain fields, specific fields, or specific techniques of storytelling?
To be honest, we're looking across a lot of different genres. We've seen great success with some of our young adult series, whether that be Elite in Spain or The Rain out of Denmark. But then we're also seeing really great genre stories working globally. So Dark was a big success for us out of Germany, something that had a unique twist on a sci-fi genre. But at the same time, we're seeing classic stories like romance, like Las Chicas del Cable out of Spain, also kind of find these global audiences. So for us, as long as people are curious and excited to watch, we're going to keep trying and experimenting with new genres.
And so you do it with adaptations to the different markets, with specificities in different markets?
Yes, we find stories from all different genres, all different places. So we have stories that are original ideas. We have stories that are inspired by books. We have stories that are inspired by podcasts or comics. Really, any range of form can bring us a great idea.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a very personal question. Are you a big reader, or did you come to the stories more through the screen, through the watching?
I grew up a big reader, so I'm an only child, and both of my parents are professors, so we were the family that never left the house without a book. So each person had a book, and you just carried it around with you. If you went to McDonald's, you had a book with you. So for me, reading at a very young age is really what brought me to this job, which is just an extension of being able to read and find great stories. Now I do it in a little bit of a different form, but always having those books that I'm reading for pleasure that are something that I would never be able to adapt for my department, those are the books that I still love reading.
It's almost too boring that you are so similar to us. And then you explain even. But speaking of the similarities and the connections, I guess, particularly in Germany, the role of the publisher is a very prestigious role. And I invite Thomas Wilking, who is the editor of Buchreport in Germany, to help us explore that relationship a little bit more in depth.
Rudiger welcomed you as a part of the family of Frankfurt Book Fair, and so I would like to find out what publishers and Netflix has in common. Publishers see their business as curators who select and invest in content, in attractive content and market it in format like books and audio. Is this a description you would, is it similar to what Netflix does with video?
I would say our job is to help storytellers bring their visions to life. So it's that partnership from the very idea, the inception of the idea, all the way through the execution and production of the show. But in general, we look at our role really as partners. So we work with people as much or as little as they need in any different capacity. And I think, you know, when we think a lot about the publishing industry, we also look at the publishers and editors in this room as partners, because we are not able to be on the ground in every country reading every book. So we really look to people to tell us, here are ideas and stories that are really capturing something with audiences and with people's imaginations. And those are great recommendations for us, and really one of the ways that we hope to be able to partner.
And the difference is you have a higher invest, higher risk, higher complexity, but you select from what have publishers done.
I think what we're lucky to be able to do is something that's a little bit different than maybe is the traditional thought process with Hollywood studios, which is when we buy something, we buy it to produce it with the aim towards not just kind of keeping it on a shelf and option, but actually bringing that story to life. So that's why we are selective in what we look for, because our goal is always to be able to actually produce it.
Mm-hmm. And how do you look at publishers? Poor relatives or something like that?
Partners, I think, is the best word that I would say. I feel really lucky. Alice, who's here on my team, comes from the publishing world. And so for us, there's a really natural integration. We work a lot with Maria Campbell, as a lot of you guys know. And so for us, the more collaboration, the better. And I think that's something that's also really unique to the television series medium. It is a collaborative medium by nature and definition.
Mm-hmm. And your relationships with publishers, not competitors, licensors, or would you describe?
Definitely.
We are talking about family, so you have to clear the.
Definitely not competitors. We have no plans to get into publishing. So I think, again, for us, we look to the people in this room to tell us what stories are resonating and where we can find the next great idea. Our goal is just to be able to bring those to life on the screen in a way that possibly hasn't ever been done before, which I think is one of the things you can really see from the books that we announced today. It doesn't necessarily have to be the thing that's kind of on the top of the bestseller list. That's not what's going to make it a great idea. It's whether or not that story and those characters really can sustain a series.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
What you mentioned is one of the most exciting parts of what I see about Netflix, and that is you're not about this week's bestseller list at all. Very often it's books that are in the market for 15 years or something, yeah? Mm-hmm. So, interesting, because it breaks a little bit this bestseller-driven spirit that we have been confronting in the past years more and more. But I guess you play down a little bit your role, because my job is always to provide some numbers.
Yeah.
And there are no precise figures in the public domain about budgets of Netflix. But there have been reports saying content development at Netflix is worth around $12, $14, $15 billion a year. By comparison, Penguin Random House reports revenues of 3.5 billion euros or $4 billion. So you are 3 times the size of the largest consumer book publisher in the world. So it's a big job that you have, not you alone, but you and the others who are commissioning this. Are you aware of that difference in size?
I would say that we look at our jobs as a great responsibility. I think that, every new consumer and audience member that gets a subscription to Netflix, they're giving us money and asking us to make a choice on their behalf to make a great series or to find a great story. So we don't take that responsibility lightly, and I think that's also why you see kind of the range of different types of things that we're doing, because we're not just looking to make one type of thing for one type of audience. We're looking to do a lot of different things for a lot of different audiences.
Very interesting how you reverse the role as publishers would see themselves. Publishers see themselves as being the one discovering and then investing and then winning the audience, hopefully afterwards. You say you get the responsibility from the audience, so the audience comes first.
Yes.
That's perhaps quite a very, very interesting difference to explore. And you have, of course, as a media company of the 21st century, a big technological component. And I guess Andrew Albanese of Publishers Weekly is well positioned to dig a little bit deeper in that regard.
Well, how well positioned? There we go.
Yeah.
We'll see how well positioned. Kelly, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
But I do want to talk about the technology side of Netflix and the data that you guys get and the data that you generate. How do you balance that? How does that go into the projects that you decide to do? To what degree is it art and science that goes into what happens at Netflix?
You almost basically work at Netflix. You just hit on the head what we say.
How about that?
What we say a lot, which is it is a combination of art and science. And so, but really it leans on, as this industry does as well, gut instinct and human intuition. I think that we're always making calculated guesses on what we think the next great story will be, but ultimately the audience is going to be the one that tells us. And so as much as we can have hopes for a success of a series, we don't ever really know until we put it out into the world how it's going to be received. I think that, one of the things that's always surprising is that we don't collect this data. When you sign up, we get your email and we get your payment information. And so we're not targeting specific audiences. What we do learn from is the taste, and the algorithm is able to say, there are this number of accounts that like this type of content. And so that can give us an indication of saying, well, great, we know there's an audience out there for a young adult series. Have they seen it from the Spanish language or the Italian language or the Turkish language before? Perhaps not. But we can imagine that if they're given that opportunity to see that series, there might be interest in it. So that's really how we're balancing it. But at the end of the day, it's all about the execution.
Well, how granular is your data on this? Do you know that you're looking for a certain series that's going to appeal to 18 to 24-year-olds who are in? No, you don't go that granular.
We do not collect any of that information.
Right. Interesting. The information that you do collect, I'm assuming gives you some sense of what you think might work, right?
And that is really driven by taste. So my mom, who is 67, might love a young adult series. It's not because she's 18 and she's watching characters that are her age. It's just because there's some universal truth to that story that really resonates with her. So we look at that across all different ranges.
When you work with publishers and agents, do you give them some specs or some guidelines as to what you would like to get from them? Like, if you could bring me a vampire story set in North Dakota.
We try not to paint the box so small, but yes, we do like to give guidelines. Like today, I was sort of talking this morning, and we're looking for a romance, as everyone is in Turkey, for example, and we're just starting our first series for the sub-Saharan African continent, and we would love to find a great book that hasn't had the opportunity to be in a global sphere before, and work with filmmakers to bring that to life. So there are always areas ideas. I'm personally very passionate about stories about strong women from female writers, that we can partner with female authors, directors, and storytellers. So I think each of the buyers that works at Netflix probably has their own small passion that they're really focused on. But I think for us, that's the great opportunity with having such a wide range of people working here.
Diversity, obviously, is something that we're working very hard to get more of in the publishing industry. We're seeing a lot more of it on bookshelves. We're seeing a lot more of it on TV. But how well is diversity represented in data? Do you see that coming through in your viewership? Can you?
I think what's exciting is just that we see a response to series with diverse lead characters. We have someone from Brazil here, I know, but of several of our first original series from Brazil, one called 3% and one called Sintonia, they really have diverse leads at the center in a way that maybe hadn't been done as often in Brazil before. And so I think what we're seeing is that when people watch those series, we're able to know, great, if we program more series that feature diverse leads and strong roles, there will be an audience for that.
Interesting. So at the opening press conference, Francis Gurry, who's the Director General of the World Intellectual Property Organization, gave a very good talk. And one of the things that he raised was the idea of where content is going to come from in the future. And he suggested that we could be feeding great books to machines. And they could do, through AI and data, could be writing narratives in the future. You're a tech company. Do you have a big robot at Netflix that you're feeding books?
People ask me if I am a computer all the time, and the answer continues to be no. If I was a computer, maybe I'd get a little bit more sleep. I wouldn't have so much jet lag. But no, we don't have any plans for that. I think this really is the art piece, which is really important for us. And I think everyone that comes to work at our company really values creative and artistic freedom. And our ability to be able to give that to our storyteller partners is something that's really important.
So you're here to continue to work with your poor relations in the publishing industry, yes.
You guys started that, not me.
He started it, yes. Great. Kelly, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I want to understand a little bit more in detail this data thing. Because frankly, the first impression is always, we have data. It's like rain. We have rain. It's there, yeah, or snow. But where do the data really come from? On the one hand, you say you collect an email address and a billing address, and that's about it. At the same time, when I have a Netflix subscription, you recommend movies or series to me. So obviously, you're guessing quite a lot what I may want to like.
Right.
So how do you do this? Is this algorithms? Is this the big computer brain somewhere in Los Angeles or in the Midwest in a bunker? Are these people tagging? This is about, I don't know, ghosts, and there comes a big old male monster. How should I imagine the process of building these data?
You actually drive a lot of that process, which is by your selections and your desire to complete or to select something else. That is where we're able to say, this is a taste, this is a type of show that you might also enjoy. Now, if we show you something and you don't like it, we learn more about what could or couldn't be better in terms of our recommendation. But ultimately, everyone has their own free will and their ability to choose and continue and complete a show. And then we just use that information to say, through tagging, through kind of what we know about genres.
Tagging done by people.
Yes.
You have taggers.
Yes.
New job title, yeah? Who are you? Senior tagger at Netflix.
Yes. I don't know if that's exactly the job title, but yes. But, you know, people who are, we're always watching content, we're always learning about our content. But I think one of the things that's interesting about what we call sort of like our taste clusters is we could say we think that people who watch this show will also like thrillers or character-driven thrillers, for example. But we don't know until people actually start watching it where it's going to kind of fall in that taste spectrum. So it's not something that's predetermined. It's determined, again, by the audience.
So it's again, you say, I drive what you do. Same way as you said before, you feel a responsibility because I drive you by giving you some money and you try to give me the return that might make me happy.
We're not always right.
You're not always right. Yeah, like in any good relationship, you can be wrong, fortunately, because otherwise it would be unbelievable.
Right.
But so the main focus is you are very, very consumer-centric, audience-centric, and not producer-centric company. Is this correct?
Well, yes, our responsibility is to make great content for our subscribers. We need to have great partners in order to do that. So that's something that's really important to us is our relationships with particularly our local producers. And they're the people who we work with to bring these stories to life. And I think in the case you'll see with the Fredrik Backman book, which we just announced, it's a returning partnership with FLX. This will be our third series that we're doing with them. And so for us, that's the best case scenario, that we can find great partners that we can continue to work with time and time again. And the more we work together, as in any good relationship or family, the more you get to know each other. And so I think for us, collaboration is really the most important part of bringing these stories, particularly in local countries, to a global audience.
Now, at the beginning of our conversation, I promised to you that we bring you quite a few new things here, really. And Kelly brought us a preview on a series that you haven't seen yet, that has some connection with here.
Yes.
Can you make the revelation?
Yes. So, and this trailer will premiere at the end of the week, but it's from our new series inspired by The Wave. Our version is called We Are the Wave, and it is a new interpretation of the film that many German audiences know and love, and the book, and from the same producer. So we'll show you the clip, and then we can talk more about it.
Can we have the clip now on the screen? Here we go.
Wie weit würdest du gehen? Für deine Ideale. Für unsere Zukunft. Es gibt nur eine Welle.
Was soll ich denn allein gegen diese ganzen scheiß rassistischen Leute machen?
Haben Sie denn gar kein schlechtes Gewissen?
Ja, heul doch!
Die werden nie aufhören, wenn du dich nicht wehrst.
Das will ich, ja.
Ich möchte Ihnen einen neuen Mitschüler vorstellen. Wollen Sie uns vielleicht ein bisschen über sich erzählen, Tristan?
Nö. Kennst du das Gefühl? Als ob du alles durch eine dicke Scheibe siehst. Manchmal musst du genau diese Scheibe einfach einschlagen. Leute, ich finde, wir sollten uns einig werden, was wir wollen.
Auf die Freiheit. Auf die Freiheit. Je mehr Leute wir sind, desto mehr können wir erreichen.
Und aus der Welle wird irgendwann ein riesiger Tsunami.
Für wen hältst du dich eigentlich?
Verwöhnten gehören ja dazu viel zu verlieren.
Ich habe vor gar nichts mehr Angst. Ich erkenne mich selbst nicht mehr wieder, Tristan.
Ich will nur Gerechtigkeit.
Thank you. I mean, the obvious wrong question to ask is, clearly Netflix has seen Extinction Rebellion and now you jump ship and produce the movie. But in terms of chronology, that's not exactly how that happened.
No.
So, very precise questions. When did you start thinking about this? And when did you get the feeling, oh, we are quite right in our timing with that story where you have a youth rebellion doing things that we see every night at TV news?
Yes. We started talking about this story. It was interesting. I saw Dennis Gansel, one of the executive producers and the original director of the series, on Friday night, and we were catching up that this conversation started about 2.5 years ago when I was in Germany and we were editing the first season of Dark, and he and I met and were having coffee and said, wouldn't it be great if we could bring that story to a new generation, to a new audience? And as we were going through the development process, it became clear that it really needed to be adapted and not just a straight remake of the film, which he had done and that audiences loved, but really sort of find an interpretation for teenagers today. And so we started talking a lot about the feeling that a lot of youth are having that our generation has screwed it up for them. And so what is inspiring for them in their ability to kind of like fight back and to take a stand for, hey, you don't get to screw up our future as well. And so through that, the conversations, particularly around the environment and thinking specifically about the importance of that conversation here in Europe, really came to light. But we had no idea what was going to be happening in culture and society. So kind of over that last 2.5 years, we kept all checking in and saying, can you believe this is happening? But we're also making this show. Are they inside of our production? How do they know what's happening? And so as these two kind of things merge together, we have continued to be really surprised and feel a little bit lucky that we kind of caught a moment in time by a story that we started talking about over 2 years ago.
You have fairly good antennas.
Like I said, we don't always get it right, but I think this is one of those times when art and life kind of reflect each other, as again, with the history of great literature has often been done, and this is just one different take on that.
But here there is, in fact, a kind of direct competition between you guys and publishers, because it's who has the better antenna and who can anticipate more clearly where we're moving. Yeah?
I would say we are not looking to have the better antenna. If anyone in this room has a better one, please tell us, and let's work together in terms of making that story into a series or a film. So for us, it's not a competition of who can do it faster or better. It's where is the great next idea coming from, and let's make it and hopefully catch the wave of the zeitgeist in the way that this series hopefully will.
I came into a conversation highlighting for me for the first time the way how you're working in that discoverability, in that discovery process, pretty precisely a year ago, when I could speak with journalist from Croatia, from Zagreb. And that person was an investigative journalist in Croatia, very much concerned about freedom of expression, censorship, political conflicts, and they ran story after story about the political debate in Croatia for years in their newspaper. And frankly, normally on the global news level, local newspaper quarrels in Croatia do not make headline news. It continued that guy, the journalist from that small local newspaper, wrote a book about his investigative journalism and why and how he was so concerned about that being a central issue of democracy in Croatia. And then, and again, that is not headline news on the global stage. I guess we agree on that. And then he produced, he started talking to Croatian TV, and they said, well, it's difficult. You are a reporter, and that's a non-fiction book. Couldn't you turn that into a novel? So the guy, willing and committed to his important idea, turned his reporting into a novel. And that novel became a Croatian TV production. And then came Netflix and said, that's an interesting idea. We have a global audience, and we believe that that global audience is really interested in that controversy between Croatian journalist and the local politics, and that became the series The Paper. So you're very, very deeply digging into that local. And you mentioned Carlo Carreño of Published News, who comes from Brazil, who lives in Sweden. So he also navigates different locations which are not Hollywood, and we want to dig into that conversation of local.
Hello. Okay. Kelly, thank you for being here. It's great to have more people from the other entertainment industries at the book fair, the Frankfurt Book Fair, and that debate here. So my first comment is, when you look at Hollywood, now they see them making these global blockbusters in English and then just pushing them to everyone. And when you look at Netflix, feels like the other way around. Like you have a Roma, a Mexican production that went to the world, or the Brazilian The Mechanism that tells one vision of the story about what's going on in Brazil. And believe me and my friends want another one with the other side of the vision, please. But it's like you are bringing local to the world, to the global, and not global to local, the opposite of Hollywood. I would like to know you to comment on that, and if that's how you feel about it. Like to be very local content and just go global with it.
That, for me, is the great opportunity of Netflix, which is our ability to bring local stories to a global audience in a way that has never been done before. And I think, when I was growing up, I lived in Japan, and so I would have my friends record Beverly Hills 90210 and put it on VHS and send it to me so that I could watch the same program that they were watching. And I think from a very young age, because of that, I started to understand the importance of kind of like pop culture in bringing cultures and relationships closer together. And so for us at Netflix, by eliminating a lot of those barriers to entry and giving the consumer the ultimate choice of what they want to watch, when they want to watch it, what language, do you want to watch it subtitled, do you want to watch it dubbed, you can watch a story from any country, anywhere in the world, and you can call your friend who's across the world and ask them to watch the same one, and you can watch it together. So those sort of freedom of choice for consumers, I think, is one of the things that's been so exciting about Netflix. But then the next level of that really being the opportunity to work with local storytellers who thought, well, I would have maybe had to take my show to a global television festival and sell it off country by country, or perhaps with the case of a film, that it would have to make its way into a local cinema. And with us, we're able to bring those stories to everyone around the world in the same day and the same time. So we're not treated our series that are non-English language any differently than the series that are English language. So in the way that they are subtitled in the same number of languages, they're dubbed into the same number of languages, and they're released globally at the same time, we're really giving these stories a new life and opportunity, which I think for us is a really exciting moment.
Thank you, and I'd like to... Hello. I'd like to explore more on the language thing. I watched The Taste of Margaritas, which is a Galician series. And being a Brazilian who speaks Spanish, I was very surprised I also understand Galician fluently. And that's exactly, you got something in the local language, Galician, a minority language, and just put it everywhere. Again, Hollywood kind of does the opposite, and going to where I live in Sweden, you get the Millennium series that was done in Swedish, a very good production, and then they had to do a remake in English in Stockholm again, and that doesn't make any sense, and it seems like the way you're doing is more interesting, especially for the minor languages. So did Hollywood get that wrong, or is the audience changing and they're accepting? They always have accepted foreign language, and that's okay, and why you're doing everything in English. Can you comment a little bit about the acceptance of foreign, especially minority languages, in the global audience?
I think audiences are just really smart today because they have access to so much. So authenticity means so much. And so if we were to tell a story, for example, set in Sweden, where you live, but everyone was speaking English, but we were portraying them all as Swedish, our audience might say, no, it's missing some sort of like authenticity to it. And so what we're able to say is that you can tell a story at the same production values and reach just as many people in the language in which it was originally intended to be told. And I think that authenticity is something that's really resonating with audiences. I worked on an adaptation of a book called Sacred Games, and I think we had something like 5 languages that we used in that series. And as we were going through the development with the author and the showrunner, we had a lot of conversations around language and how many languages we could have and what was important for which language. And what we kind of really drilled down on was, well, what would people really be speaking in that situation? So if you're at work, what language would you speak to your boss? If you're at the grocery store down the street, what language would you be speaking to the clerk? And then we really let the authenticity of the situation and the language lead our process.
And you don't feel like in the US or in the UK, for instance, you don't feel that the audience wants that in English?
I think English languages audiences are growing. They're definitely not the first. In countries where there've been a long tradition of dubbing, for example, like Brazil, much more open to sort of cultures and languages from outside of their own. I think in the US, we're learning. So it's every series that we do where we see a great response. In the case of something like Dark, we're able to see through the number of people that have watched that in the US and the UK that there is an opening and a change in taste, perhaps.
So basically, Netflix is making people read, right? Because they have to read the subtitles.
We leave it up to you. I think one of the funniest things is when you're sort of out with friends or a dinner party, and I'll talk to them about a show that I worked on, and I'll say, well, did you watch it in subtitles or dubs? And to a person, they will always say that they watched it in subtitles, and I'm like, half of you are lying. A lot of you guys watched it in dubs.
But still there's a possibility there.
Yeah.
So one last thing, because I have this I'm an immigrant in Europe, and I love the originals of Netflix because they're available at the same time in every country, but the rest of the content is not. So sometimes my Brazilian friends are commenting on something, I know it's not exactly area there, and then I cannot watch it in Sweden because it's not available there, because of the geolock. Is it getting better? Is it becoming easier for you to really make global things? And you can't imagine what I had to do to watch Merli in Catalan in Sweden and all the crazy things I do. So do you think that's getting better, or are you still facing lots of geolocks and these territorial rights are still a problem for you guys?
The more originals that we do, the more available they are globally. So anything that, for example, our team does is available in 190 countries on the same day and the same time. The ones that are licensed or co-productions, there are still some sort of restrictions around, but our goal is obviously for everything to be available to everyone.
Please, because my kids need to get the Brazilian content in Sweden. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's the moment where I have to say Asia, yeah? Asia, China, India, Japan. We have a guest who is a partner in the Global 50 ranking, Sangguo Zheng from Beijing. There is no Netflix in China at the moment, right? Is Netflix in China?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, how are Netflix plans for Asia, and especially in China? You know, there are so many video audiences in China, much more than readers.
China has been, as you know, a bit of a difficult regulatory environment for us, but we are really pleased with our growth kind of across Asia and the way that we're really seeing Asian stories, whether they're from Korea or Japan, travel within the region. And I think, our long-term hope is obviously to be closer connected and to be able to do more. But today we're really focusing on our local offices and our local teams. So we have teams working in Seoul and in Tokyo, as well as our Singapore office. And really, I think for us, the excitement around Asian content with things like Kingdom, which we saw coming out of Korea, or Love Alarm, or we have a new series from Japan called Naked Director. That excitement is something that really gives us great indication that we'll be able to do a lot more across Asia.
Thank you. Do you see any relevant cultural difference in the programming preferences between Asian audiences and Europe or North America?
I think what we're seeing is that every audience, there is a desire for great local stories. So Asia is no different from that. And so I think, again, for us as programmers, that's an opportunity. And we have more and more content buyers and producers that are working in our local offices and in our local languages. So for us, having a team in Seoul or a team in Paris just gives us an opportunity to be more closely connected to the production and creative community, but also to the audiences, and have a better sense of what it is that they want to see and what they want to watch.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And as so often when you start a conversation, you run out of time before you have had half of the questions that are preoccupying your mind. I very much enjoyed all the details that you shared with us, Kelly, and I really and very seriously hope that is the start of a conversation and a start of extending the publishing family to the Netflix streaming service audience family. And the obvious advice is watch Netflix series in order to discover the right books, the original books, and read those books right after the series. And download the Global 50, which is free of charge, by the way, 230 pages about the players in the publishing industry worldwide. You have the download links here at the 2 screens. It's very simple. Just copy them and you will find a lot of information making your life easier and a lot of things that you can read. Thank you so much.
Yes, and I just wanted to say thank you guys for welcoming us and me here today. My dad is actually German from Darmstadt, and my cousin Annika's here, and so it's really special for me to be able to be here, so thank you.
Darmstadt?
Yes.
That's around the corner.
I know. So I've grown up coming to Frankfurt,
okay,
but never on
welcome.
a stage, so thank you.
Thank you very much and have a nice fair.